Shoe Repair Workshop.
Good evening, my name is Eric Norman. I'm a shoemaker, and today I'm going to show you a little bit of shoe repair and maintenance.
Maintenance and care of leather shoes.
This is a pair of shoes that I made, just so you get an idea of what I do. Mostly I work with leather, and actually that's all I work with. And so today we're going to look at how to take care of a pair of shoes. So firstly, I guess we should talk about what leather is. So leather is basically a preserved animal hide. For the purposes of this conversation, we're probably going to be talking about cowhide. And there's different, as you can imagine, there's different qualities of leather, there's different sources of it, and different types of leather. So these are all just examples of different types of leather. In the tanning process, which is how leather is preserved, oak bark and acorns and different other species of trees are used to preserve the wood. And just like you've probably heard that wine has tannins, the tannins in the oak bark are used to preserve leather. It's very common for tanneries to have a symbol that contains an oak leaf or an oak bark like this one does here. These are from Germany. And it's for that reason, because the tanning process starts with the oak products. And so the highest quality leather is going to be called full grain. And grain is the uppermost layer. You can see it on the diagram. It's the uppermost layer. It's the tightest structure of protein fibers, and therefore it's the strongest. It's not a universal way of evaluating quality, but if you kind of can look at the back of leather, you'll see this. The front side, the top side, typically that we use is called, again, grain side. The back side is going to be what's called flesh side. So oftentimes it's a little bit, we would call that nappy, where the nap is, the fluffy side. Not all leather looks like that on the back side. Sometimes it's finished, like this one. Some of that has been removed because this leather is so thin. This is from a calf, a baby cow. So it's a thinner hide. But as you can see, leather comes, depending on the type of cow and the age, it can be very thick. Right? But for our purposes, high quality shoes are made with full grain leather. You've probably also heard of top grain. Top grain is relatively similar. You can see it on the diagram. It comes and does include that grain structure from the very top, but oftentimes it's a little bit further down. And then further below that are what's called the corium, which is the layers that produce, oftentimes suede is made from that because it's a little bit of a softer feel. The grain structure is open, and so it's kind of fleshy. And so to accentuate this, it's sanded, and that's what produces this iconic feature of suede, where you can brush it one way and brush it the other way, and you can see that it's either standing up or sitting down. And that's called nap. And so that's just a little bit about leather. One thing that is important to think about from a sustainability perspective is that leather is a byproduct of meat production. And so I understand that a lot of people are interested in vegan leather and have heard a lot about that and probably think they're doing something that's maybe more responsible by buying vegan leather. This is an example of a synthetic, non-animal based leather. The issue with vegan leather is that at the moment, and this might change, but at the moment, it typically is made from petroleum byproducts, and the qualities that it has, meaning as it bends, it typically is going to want to break down. It's very brittle and it tends to crack. It will not last as long as a high quality animal based hide that is leather, right? And again, I just want to make people think that sometimes it's marketing that convinces you that vegan something is better than a natural product. But in this case, and I've done a lot of research, natural leather, real leather, is a much better material to use. I work with it every day, and it has amazing properties of strength. And as you can see, this one doesn't want to stretch very much at all. I'm pulling quite hard on it. Other ones are softer. You can see this one has a little bit more stretch. This one is what's called genuine leather. meaning that it has some real pieces of leather in it, but the top layer is coated with almost like a plastic. It's a vinyl top coating. This is similarly what you'll find in cars. It's like an upholstery leather. You can see how stretchy this one is. But again, the most durable leather is going to be full grain natural leather. Now, say that you've got a pair of shoes that is starting to show a little bit of wear and tear. It's showing its age. This is basically the beginning of the process of taking care of it to maintain it and make sure that it'll last as long as possible. The first step is to get this is a horsehair brush. It's relatively soft, and this is a dust brush. This one for me is a dedicated dust brush. I never apply any product on this like conditioners or waxes. It's only for removing dust from the surface. And what I would recommend to start off with is if you have a shoe tree, I would put the shoe tree in. If you don't have a shoe tree, and for the purposes of this demonstration, you can just use some tissue paper to stuff inside, because having a little bit of structure on the inside of the shoe will make it easier to spread the products and buff the shoes and shine the shoes. So we'll leave one as it is, natural, and we'll treat this one. So again, you can first start off with just brushing. So remove the laces and get your dust brush and the entire surface. Since there's no product on this, you're not going to do any damage. I guess the only way you could really damage the shoe is if you hit this is called the upper, by the way. If you hit the upper with your brush, you could probably scratch it, but just be mindful while you're brushing it. And again, the only purpose of this is to remove the little dust that will settle on it while it's sitting in your closet, or the dirt and debris that falls on it as you're wearing your shoes throughout the day. And sometimes just from brushing it, you'll notice a difference in the appearance of the shoes. But for these, pretty similar to where we started, just with the brushing. So that's step one. If they are showing signs of kind of severe dryness, like you can see on the toe here, or on the collar, the top line, what we call, you can see how it looks dry. Just like your elbows look dry, the parts of the leather will look dry and kind of ashy in the same way. And so one option is if the shoes have been pretty dirty previously and you feel like the dust brush wasn't enough, you can use saddle soap, bunch of different kinds, different manufacturers. It's a very easy to use product. You just typically, sometimes it'll come with an applicator, or you can keep a little brush handy. You'll put some water, I would say put some water in the lid, dip your brush into the lid, kind of get a little bit of a lather going, and then you'll scrub the shoe. Just like you're taking a shower for yourself, you would scrub the shoe. You don't have to worry too much about putting excessive amount of product. Don't go crazy with it, but because at the end, after you've scrubbed the shoe, you're gonna dry off the excess just with a soft towel, nothing crazy. Just remove any excess moisture and then let them set there and dry with the laces off. These shoes again have a plastic or rubber sole, so you can just set them like that. If it's a leather-soled shoe, sometimes you might want to consider maybe putting them on their side to dry, because they'll dry through the sole as well. But with these, that won't happen anyway, so that's not a problem. But again, if you need to, you can use saddle soap that'll apply a little bit of conditioning and it'll remove debris from the outside of the shoe. The whole surface, anywhere that there's leather, you can scrub, right? And you'll use little circles like that, get a lather going, and then wipe off the excess and let it dry. If that's enough, if that treats it like you want it to, then the next step would be to apply some kind of conditioner or what's called a cream polish. And maybe a lot of people have not had experience with cream polish. I think most of us, when we think of shoe polish, we think of the old-fashioned thing that our dad or grandpa had, which comes in a tin like this and is kind of a hard wax product. But to be honest, I personally think that the vast majority of shoe care should be done with just cream polishes, and these are almost exactly like the conditioner, the cream you would use on your body. They're soft, they're called cream polish because they literally are just creamy. And they come in a variety of colors, different manufacturers. I would do a little bit of research on the quality of product that you're buying, because there are companies, for example, these come from France, but there's a manufacturer in the United States. These are made in Oregon. These do not use petroleum distillates. Some of the other ones you can get, like at the grocery store, might be made from petroleum distillates. Obviously, that's personal preference if you want to support that, but I personally try to avoid petroleum distillates. This product specifically uses orange oil as a substitute for mineral oil or the petroleum byproducts, and so these smell great. They're not going to stink up the house like the other ones would, and obviously they're better for you. This company actually uses all natural ingredients, non-toxic, so if you had your dog come over and get into that tin, you don't have to worry about them getting poisoned. So what you want to do is match, well, it depends on what you want to do. If you don't want the color to change, then I would recommend using a cream polish that's one shade lighter than these shoes, right? So in this case, this is probably like a medium or dark brown. If you wanted to darken it, you could use even black, maybe like a black cream polish. This is a dark brown, which you can see is slightly darker than the shoe is right now. But I also have a light brown, and I'm not going to try and darken these shoes, so I'm going to use the lighter brown. So what you'll do, you can use your finger, especially again if it's these natural products, you can use your fingers to apply it, or if you want, you can use a cloth. An old t-shirt makes a good spreader. Basically put it on your fingers, wrap it around your fingers, and wrap the excess and keep that in the palm of your hand. And you can dip that in. I'm going to use my fingers because it allows me to feel whether I'm putting too much product or just the right amount of product. And you don't want to put too much because you'll just end up wasting it. You're going to wipe it off at the end anyway. So you only want to put as much as the shoe is going to absorb. So the other recommendation is always start, I would say maybe so a shoe has an inside side and an outside. I would use the inside of the heel. It's kind of a spot that is not going to be too prominent in case something happens that you don't want. So I would test them. So I would put this finger has some product, this one is clean, so I just dab a little bit on and start using circular motions to kind of work it in. And you can see that it's darkening up a little bit. Most of that is going to come out as the cream dries a little bit, but you can see that it does add a little bit of richness to the color, and if there's slight discoloration, it'll kind of even the color out. So you're going to do this to the whole shoe, including the tongue. So you'll open up the lining, get some on the tongue. The other thing is, if you really enjoy this kind of thing, you can buy a little applicator brush, and in order to avoid putting too much, you can put some on your finger and then spread it on the applicator, and that'll help you not overspread the product. And the brushing is good for another reason too, which is that it kind of pushes the product into the pores of the leather, and it'll help with absorption and even coloration. So we're just going to go and work this in. I would pay particular attention. So a shoe typically is going to bend in the mid part of the foot, and so there's a strong crease line. I would really hydrate that area because that's where it's most likely to crack. And so if you moisturize it, it's just like your skin. It won't want to crack because it's moisturized. This will just go. And again, if you have a brush, it's a good time to brush it in. Circular motions. And again, look for dry spots. Oftentimes at the top of the collar, you'll see that it's a little bit dry. So just make sure you get it worked in. You don't want it to cake in, and say for example there's a seam right here. If I had put too much, it would just fill that seam. You don't really need to apply the product that much. It's not going to hurt the shoe, but you're just going to wipe the product away, and so it's a little bit wasteful. And again, pay particular attention along the crease. Work it in there. Get the tongue. If your shoe has a leather lining, you can get a little bit on that part as well. Even if it's a different color, it's not really going to hurt it. It won't do any damage to the shoe. And then after you've brushed it in, you want to set the shoe aside for maybe 10 or 15 minutes for the cream to penetrate. And one thing is, if you have an old toothbrush, I would also recommend, if you have leather shoes especially, this area is called the welt. And that is typically made of leather. On this shoe, it's not. But if it were made of leather, I would put a little bit of cream polish, I'd dab it in there, and I'd apply this there as well. Because that can crack and that can cause problems later on. So just get a little brush and work it in. It'll kind of self-clean, meaning if there's too much material as you're brushing, it'll kind of brush off the excess. Just set it aside for 10 or 15 minutes to dry. Okay, so after it's been a little time and the cream polish has set in and basically dried, you can take just an old t-shirt, or in this case it was, sporting event free towel that they throw out, and you're gonna remove the excess. You're gonna kind of use small circles again, go over the entirety of the shoe, just work it off so that there's not any sitting on the top. The penetration will have happened already, and so the moisture, the nourishing moisture should already be inside the leather, and so right now you're just removing any excess. And you can see they already start to have a little glow just from that conditioning. Look how much better they look now. And like I say, for the most part, in my opinion, I do not think people need to give a high polish to their shoes every time you shine your shoes. If you use cream polish, they have hard waxes in there. The product that we applied has a little bit of carnauba wax, and so they'll already have a little bit of a sheen to them, and that's what we'll enhance with this next step. So you've buffed it off, the whole shoe, and again, if your welt is leather, you can clean off the leather welt as well. And then this is another horsehair brush. This one I use for neutral polish, this one I use for brown like this. And so remember, we've applied cream polish, let it sit, and now we've removed the excess. And let's just see if you can tell any difference with a slight brushing now. This typically is going to even out the shine of the shoe and pushes those oils to the surface, gives the shoe a little bit of a healthy sheen. And so there's untreated on the left, and your right, treated on the right. If you want to go further, of course, you can apply wax polish, and just like with the cream polish, it comes in different colors. So you can get a darker one. In this case, again, I'm going to go with the lighter one. And with with wax polish, it's a little bit different than probably most people have seen growing up with grandpa polishing his shoes or dad polishing his shoes. You actually want to use water. So I'm going to put a little bit of water in the top of this lid, and we're going to make kind of an emulsion mix of water and oil, and that's what's going to kind of push in the waxes onto. And one thing I guess I should note is you can only really do this on the parts of the shoe that will not bend. And so in the heel there's a stiffener, and at the toe typically there's a stiffener. This one is relatively soft, so I don't want to go too crazy, because if you put a lot of wax, it's going to crack and it'll crumble and fall off. So you can only apply, if you put wax polish, for example here, the first time you took a step, it's going to crack, look white, and look terrible, and it'll flake off as you walk all day. So you only really can apply it to the tip of the toe and maybe again at the back of the heel, a little bit of shine like that. You can kind of see on this pair how the tip of the toe is shiny and this back portion is shiny, but everywhere else is pretty much just a soft sheen, not shiny. Alright, so to apply a little bit of wax to your shoe, this is just sleeve of an old t-shirt. I'm going to put probably my 2 fingers there and twist the excess into the palm, kind of like that. A little bit longer would probably be easier, but this will work. And I've got some water in the top of the lid. And what I'm going to do is I'll use my, I guess is the ring finger for dipping into water, and I'll dip the 2 fingers that are in the towel into the wax polish. So I'll get a little bit of product. You can see just a little on the tip of the cloth there. And I'll dip my finger into the water, put a little bit of water down, and then using small circles, I'll work the wax onto the toe. And if you start to feel resistance on the cloth, that's probably a good indication that you need to use a little bit of water. And again, what this is going to do is make an emulsion, kind of like mayonnaise, and that is going to allow you to push the wax into the surface of the leather, into the pores. That way you can build layers, because that's what provides the mirror finish that people commonly aim for, which is a lot of little layers that are built up smooth, so smooth that they, I guess, basically fill in the pores of the leather and have a reflective surface. So you'll put a little water, work the product in, put a little water, work the product in, and it'll help to do some swirling motion on the toe, and then maybe on the sides, you get a little polish, a little water, dab a little bit, and maybe some side to side, back and forth, because if you do only focus in one direction, you'll only get shine on that one spot that you touch. So alternating between the circular motions and the back and forth will give you a little bit of even coverage. And to get the really high shine, I guess similar to what you can see on this, I would still consider this like a medium shine. It's going to take time, so you're just going to go back and forth. So again, you can only do it on the toe and on the heel, because those are the only parts that don't flex. And I would do, for example, on this one, the right toe first, then the right heel, then set it aside and go to the left shoe, do the left toe, then the left heel, give them a little, take your time, come back again and slowly build it, because there's a component in the wax that needs to evaporate so that the waxes can remain. And if you try to put a really high shine on shoes, you can't achieve that if you're working too fast. Actually, sometimes you would want to leave it overnight to really harden, and then you can use like a little polishing cloth or a nylon, like a stocking, to really give it the perfect shine. But for this shoe, and for most of my personal shoes, I do not like an extremely high shine. I just find that it looks a little bit unnatural, and so we just want a little bit of cream like that, a little bit of wax like this. So we'll leave it like that to sit. Now that the wax has had a little bit of time to set up and harden, we can use a cloth to just give it a little buffing. And then you can take your brush, not the dust brush, but this is also horsehair, but this is my brown brush. Just give it a soft brushing. And if you wanted to, you can continue building and building and building until you get the desired level of shine that you want. But I think for a shoe like this, a little bit of an understated toe where it's not excessively shiny looks good. And after you've built a wax shine, a hard wax shine, like on the heel and on the toe, it takes very little to maintain that. At the end of the day, you've come home from work, you're ready to take your shoes off. What I would do is always use your dust brush. That's going to be first and foremost. Just remove everything that kind of got on there throughout the day. Just wipe it off. And just by doing that, you can probably go a month to 2 months with just the cream conditioner that's already in there and the wax that's already on there and the dust brush. That'll make the shoes look really nice and keep the leather healthy so it lasts a long time. And again, if you want to do the high polish, then you can do that a little bit more frequently, but typically it takes an hour to build a good polish on the toe like these. And so if you build too many layers, it can be hard to maintain, but once you've hit kind of a good level, it doesn't take too much maintenance on them, just occasional brushing. Now, if you go out and it's a rainy day, especially if you have leather-soled shoes, as I mentioned before, leather is the ultimate enemy water is the ultimate leather enemy because it softens it, and when you walk in a puddle and then you walk on concrete, it's like sandpaper, and so it'll remove a lot of the life of your sole very quickly. So let's say you had these two pairs of shoes after a day out in the rain. This pair, again, I would just maybe stuff newspaper inside of and leave it like that to dry. I would not put it next to a heater. I would not use a hair dryer because that'll dry it too quickly and it can cause cracking. If you had this shoe, I would say, again, always use a shoe tree. That'll partially help out. You might consider, if the shoes got really soaked and you had leather soles, drying them on their side, probably to the inside, because again, that's usually not seen as much as the outside is. So you can set them like that and just let them dry, and then if they need conditioning, sometimes from being really wet, it'll pull the conditioning out of them, so you might need to start with the cream polish again and then maybe touch up the wax polish. But again, don't use heat. Heat will dry out the leather and cause it to crack and shorten its lifespan. And just to give a little illustration of the difference between an uncared for shoe and a little, 15, 30 minutes of care, drastic difference in color, tone, richness.
Thank you for watching.